Good evening, friends, and welcome to another Purple Mountain video with myself, Chris, and Stephen, who is joining me this evening. Representing, we're each at our own homes this evening. I'm at the Purple Mountain, and Stephen's at his home. So we welcome you all to this video. We're going to wait a few minutes just till we get a few people coming online. But it's a pleasure to share this time with you all this evening on this special talk on reincarnation as requested by everyone on Friday night. So hello to Marie Marsden and to Ruth. She's joining us straight away. Hello, everyone. Oh, we've got a good number of people joining us. So we're really happy to be with you this evening and to be doing this video. So we're just going to do a little bit of a short explanation. First of all, I hope everybody's keeping safe and well, and the world's slowly get back to normal in small ways. And I know a lot of churches, centres, spiritual sanctuaries are making preparations to reopen in some way or form. So anybody that we know who runs any spiritual sanctuaries or doing any spirit work, we wish you the very best in your reopening, and we all need to stick together, don't we, Stephen? That's really important. And stay positive, because people will look to those who are working in churches, centres, healing sanctuaries for guidance. So we're in a tremendous position of responsibility, and I know myself and Stephen understand that, and that's really important. But this evening is all about reincarnation. So this is the first video of a series we'll do on reincarnation, because we have done talks in it before. We find it opens up a lot of questions. Okay, so myself and Stephen this evening, just to be clear before we start, are here to share our truths, what we've learned on our journey, to the best of our knowledge. Now, please feel free, take it away, tear it apart, question it, look at it, do your own research, meditate on it, and take what you feel is right for you. We are not saying you should follow this, you should do that. Please, I've got to be clear on that before we start. We're just sharing the best of our knowledge. We're sharing our truth, because to us, this is the truth that we're going to speak. But it doesn't mean it is your truth. Okay, you take what's right for yourself. There's going to be opportunity all night for questions. We're going to try and start at the beginning of things best we can. Okay, so hopefully everybody will find it really interesting of the spiritual truth of reincarnation, which has there's many belief systems with reincarnation, the Buddhist culture and such, and it's weaved through many cultures and religions as well, different forms, different belief systems on reincarnation. So we're going to share ours. So, Stephen, we're going to start with yourself this evening, and where we want to start is we want to start with who you are. What is a spirit? When we talk about you are a spirit within a physical body, your soul, your spirit, what is it? So I'm going to hand over to Stephen, and he's going to start us off.
Wow, I think, hi everybody, thank you very much for Chris for asking me that question, and I will do my best to answer that. It's one of the very first questions I personally asked when I first joined a spiritual circle many years ago. I'm one of these people that tear stuff apart. I ask lots of questions. I was very inquisitive, so I think that's very important when you're on your spiritual path, to ask questions, to meditate, to find those answers yourself. If you're in a spiritual circle, there's lots of people that will share their wisdom, their knowledge. But one thing that I want to add, what Chris was saying, is that reincarnation is a simple spiritual truth. It's so simple to understand that we've all on this earth, each one of us have reincarnated upon the earth for a reason, for a purpose. There's a lot of us that don't understand that reason, that don't understand that purpose. I'm very fortunate, so is Chris. We're on our spiritual path. I fully accept and understand my purpose upon this earth. I feel like I'm in the right place and the right time doing my work. I think that's very important. But what is a spirit? Well, a spirit is unconditional love. It is light. It is truth. Now, we're all part. Some of these words that we're going to be using might sound a bit alien to you, but that's not our intention. Our intention is to share what we know. We're all part what we call the creator. The creator, you want to call God. Unfortunately, religion, man-made religion, have distorted that truth and have manipulated that truth for thousands and thousands of years. So when we use the word God, don't get your back up, don't associate that with religion, that we're all part of that greater spider's web, if that makes sense. And this is why in the spirit world, we're all brothers and sisters. That's why when we all return back to the spirit world, we might be mum, dad, grandma, granddad physically, but once we go back to the spirit world, we return back to the source, what we call the source of all creation, which is the divine light, unconditional love, truth. There's no distortions there. There's no fragmentations there. There's no fears there. It's pure unconditional love. It is a wondrous place. Many people call it heaven, but I don't believe in heaven or hell. It's just the state of your mind. You know, if you're very distorted in this life, you're very confusing, you would take to a degree some of that confusion and distortion back to the spirit world. But one thing I'd like to add as well before we move on to another question is that your spirit can never die. Your spirit will live on for eternity. There's no time in spirit. Even in the constructs of time here upon our universe, what we call universal plane or cosmic plane, I don't want to go too deep about this. We fragment time, we confuse time. But ultimately, here on the universal plane, there is no time. It's just a continuation of energy and vibration. And I think to understand things a little bit better, see yourself as pure energy. And when we reincarnate, we choose the physical vessel, the host, a bit of a colder term, the physical host, the physical body, and we attached ourselves to that physical body. So we are a spirit in a physical body. Some people have said we are a physical body within a spirit. So to see it in a very different way, that's very interesting as well. So I hope I've explained a little bit about what the spirit is there, Chris.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think you put it very well. And there's a few people mentioning there about the creative consciousness. But we have a question here straight away, which is it's quite an interesting question from Shah. So hello, Shah. I think I can put it up actually on the screen.
Yes, you can. On the screen.
There we go.
Could the family I'm in now in this life be part of my soul circle? Is it possible that we reincarnated into new lives together in the past? Do you want me to answer that, Chris?
Yeah, maybe just to start off with a little bit what a soul group or soul circle is.
Right. Very, very simply, in the spirit world, there are a part of the consciousness, because somebody mentioned consciousness. We're part of the collective consciousness, part of the collective light, truth, and we're all bounded and we're all connected with one another. We're all brothers and sisters. But in the spirit world, there is what we call a spiritual division, if you will. There is different steps, there's different vibrations. I don't like using the word different levels because it implies that some spirits are better than others, and that's not what we're saying, and that's not what's like in the spirit world. What makes us different, what makes us an individual, what makes us an authentic self, and we're going to be talking about that later on, won't we, Chris, about your individuality and your authentic self, or your reincarnation. So each time I reincarnate, I create, to a degree, a personality, a character. and I build up on that vibration for thousands of years. I've reincarnated many times. And so that's given me a state of evolution. That's given me a state of learning experience. And that's helped my spirit to grow. So I will feed my learning into the greater consciousness, but also feed my own consciousness, my own light, which means, Shah, very simply, is that not only do we progress individually, we can progress into soul groups. Now, soul groups can consist of millions of spirits or hundreds of thousands of spirits. And what will happen is that the soul group will have what we call a collective purpose. And you can all feel, and Shah, you've been to the Purple Mountain before, where we often talk about a lot of the younger generation now, a lot of the very bright spirits reincarnating back to the earth, which means that part of their soul group is to really drive a positive change upon the earth. So there will be hundreds of thousands of the same soul group reincarnating across the earth, different countries, all having the same purpose. Now, me and Chris, we belong to the same soul group, which means that our purpose, our reincarnation, which we'll talk about later on, is to heal the earth, to make positive change. So part of the soul group is just a collective, a consciousness of individuals who have the same purpose, who are driving that same purpose at that same time, if that makes sense. I don't know if Chris wants to.
I think that makes perfect sense. It's driving, and its purpose and intention, I feel, are really important there. And often we'll talk about connecting with somebody on the earth plane for the first time, and you feel that you've known them for many years and you feel an affinity with them straight away, and there's a very, very high chance that that person is part of the soul group. For example, you could have a group at the Purple Mountain, and you may have a circle with 20 people, for example, and that might be such a small portion. There might be thousands of you on the earth plane, and the fact that you're able to connect from the same soul group is fantastic. Because once you hit the earth plane, as I'm sure we'll get into, things don't always go to plan as well. It's best laid plans in many ways. There is cause and effect. Okay, so we've talked about what the spirit is. I know we've another question coming up there. Do you want to do another question, Stephen, or do you want to?
No, let's do one more question, then we'll move on to another part, because I think reincarnation is a massive subject.
Exactly. So we're going to, as we've said, we'll get through as much as we can, and we're going to go to Ian David next, and he's got a question that I'm just going to put on the screen, and here it is.
If you reincarnate, who do you contact in the world of spirit when you communicate with loved ones if we reincarnate? Well, that's very interesting. That I know what you're trying to say there, Ian, is I'll tell you a bit of a story. We communicate with somebody called Albert Einstein, who's one of our teachers here at the Purple Mountain, hence part of our group's called the Einstein Initiative.
To say the very least.
The very least. And he says, now, if you believe in reincarnation, now, if you've lived 200 times, I'm just making this up, if you've lived 200 times upon the earth, Ian, in different lives, you must have, during those times, there could have been a good chance you could have had some children, you would have had a mother and father, grandparents. Now, during those times, you would have made thousands and thousands of friends. And as being part of the collective consciousness, it's very easy to look at things very physically and try to detach yourself on those physical thoughts and those ideas and look at things very spiritual. And so in the spirit world, we being part of the soul group, we could have had a mother and father, and as we progress, they will move on to another soul group. Our children end up moving on. They maybe end up being our grandparents, our parents in the next life. So things change and evolve. So, I mean, that can only happen once we're all on a level of understanding and we've all moved on. But ultimately, not everybody will reincarnate as part of the soul group. When I said millions, maybe only half of the soul group might reincarnate. The other half might stay in the spirit world. And what might also happen is that the thousands of spirits, Chris, that actually don't make they don't make it.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
reincarnate. You know, they end up the mother and father don't end up conceiving. You know, when you choose your mother and father, that doesn't happen. You know, plans can change. Like Chris said, you know, once you hit the earth plane is so uncertain, filled with temptation, and things cause and effect. Things change all the time. And so, but there's guides, and that's why you'll have your guides, you'll have your inspirers, you will have your helpers in the spirit world that will assist you in your journey. So it's not that everybody's reincarnating and no one's at home in the spirit world. There's always somebody there. I mean, it will be probably beyond, to a degree, our comprehension. So I don't know if I sort of answered that question.
Yeah, I think you did. It was an interesting question to get us started there. But it's also, yeah, it's interesting about that side of it. What I wanted to add was, in reincarnations, there's many belief systems that believe that it's like a constant wheel, that you come back to the spirit world and you instantly get sent back, that there's some God there who said, right, you've not done what you needed to do, off you go, and sort of kicks you back into this world. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is free will. We all have free will. And you only come back when you're ready, when you want to, when you feel that pull to the earth plane that you want to return. Of course, like Stephen said, you have guides, inspirers. You will seek people out in the spirit world for advice. Maybe somebody who's just not long returned from the earth plane. So it'll take many years in our time, although there's no time in spirit, to gain the knowledge you need and the careful consideration to coming back. Yeah,
I think I just want to add there, Chris, as well. I think a lot of people, I laugh because when we're in the movement, and there's a lot of people that are watching this that will say, I'll never come back to this earth plane again. I'm so sick and tired of it.
Yeah, that's what everybody says.
We might have said that in our other life. I think what's really important, I think what we really, me and Chris really want to instill to you is that the earth plane is such a wonderful, beautiful place for each one of us to experience, to learn, to evolve. Even though there are many hard times, difficult times, there are even more better times. The spirit grows consciously through its evolution so beautifully upon the earth. And that's why it's so valuable, isn't it, Chris? Our life upon the earth. Your life is so gifted and so important.
Well,
we have so much work to do, so much to experience.
I think that's so true. It's hit the nail on the head. And I think so many of us, we almost sometimes want to wish life away. We wonder why we're here. We get lost in that illusion and distortion, and it really drags us down. And I feel that song that, you know, blessed we are, saying, remember why you came here. Remember your life is sacred. And it is sacred. It's very special. You are very special. And we've talked about this on other videos, and people we've interviewed and myself and Stephen have discussed this. We tend to look to outsiders to give praise, and we look for heroes and heroism, when really very much the true hero lies within you, within every one of us, within your power, within your strength. And many times what you love and respect about somebody else, you actually love and respect about yourself, but you would never dare say it because we're programmed not to give that self-love, if that makes sense. So there's lots of facets to this.
Absolutely, but really, it's very simply, it is, you know, we all return to the earth plane, whatever your purpose, whatever your mission or what your plan is. You are here to experience a physical life. It is in those experiences that helps your spirit to grow and evolve.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's something. Again, myself and Stephen discussed, and we've learned over the past 12 months, every experience, good or bad, be grateful for, as hard as that sounds, because it's there to teach you. When something happens, look for the lesson in it. look for the blessing in it in many ways of what it might teach you. Even if you come across somebody in your life who you might have a difficult relationship with or time, look at what that teaches there. There is something there to teach you, that you have been drawn to that person for a reason. So all these beautiful lessons in life, and if you start looking at things that way, then you start to see life in a different way.
I mean, absolutely. I did a writing not long ago about there isn't such thing. Spirit don't see, and I really accept this in my heart, that there isn't a wrong path or a right path. Everything in life, every journey we take, every road we take is all lessons. The earth plane's filled with such wonderful lessons. We make it harder as human beings, a spirit in a physical body, that human side, that physical ego, which we'll probably touch upon later on. We make our journey so difficult. So don't react when something bad happens. Just question yourself. And what I do now, and I know you're starting to do this now, Chris, as well, is say, well, what have I learned from this lesson, from this situation, where maybe 2-3 years ago I used to think, oh my God, what is this all about? And you're panicking and you're scared. And you say, I'm never going to come back. And you get so frustrated. And really see every situation as a blessing. I know that seems very sort of heavenly, but it is very, very simple. See every situation as an opportunity to learn and to grow. Don't you agree?
Absolutely, I totally agree, and something I'm personally seeing more and more, and we've been in that cycles. I have before. Myself and Stephen have said these words in the past years. We're not coming back. That's it. Why have we come back? And all these questions we will ask ourselves. But once we start recognizing the teachings and everything, and often, even if you meet somebody, if there's something in them that you might be struggling with your tolerance, or you're seeing something there, it might be mirroring something that lies within you. So you're seeing that for a reason, so you can repair it. It's hard to look within sometimes, but once you start to look within, once you start seeing things from that angle, it helps you. And it helps you not, for lack of a better word, I don't believe you can waste energy, but it helps you not get worked up or get yourself to that level where you're just plowing out and exhausting yourself over why am I here, and this, and allowing yourself to drift into a confused state, really, by seeing the blessings, seeing the teachings in things, and keeping them simple, because so often we can create this puzzle out of a small situation when really it's just very small. So it's just very small to look at. I think we're going a little bit off subject.
No, that's great.
But that's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, we don't realize as spirit in a physical body, as we are beautiful creators, we have the power to create anything we want. Our state of mind is in constant flux. Yeah. We have the ability to create such wonderful things. And I think that's what we try to instill in people. Know your own power, know who you are. But there was a teaching, wasn't it, Chris? Something that we've learned a very, very long time ago, and it's related to reincarnation, that if the moments of uncertainty, the moments of sadness, when we make mistakes, how many of us judge ourselves so harshly when we've made a mistake, when we've stumbled, or when we've fallen? It is in those moments that helps us to grow. So why should we punish ourselves in those moments? See that as a blessing.
Spot on, yeah.
So see that as a positive, because I mean, you used to be really bad, weren't you, Chris? I mean, you used to be really harsh with yourself, really self-critical.
Yeah,
really
I think there's I think that's important to mention then when we talk about seeing the lessons and seeing the blessings and everything, that also when you do see those faults within yourself, don't hammer yourself into the ground, because that won't do any good either. Just see them in a clear, honest perspective, but don't overdo it. Don't turn it into a monster that's going to engulf you, if that Makes sense.
Yeah, so should we watch the next part of the topic, Chris?
Well, we've got a few questions, but before we go to them, I just wanted to talk about your preparation. So we've talked about being a spirit, consciousness in the spirit world, and what kind of preparations will say, Stephen, you're in the spirit world and you've taken the decision to return to the earth plane. What do you feel? What preparations would you begin to make?
Wow, I think that's a very, very important question, and it is a very, very large topic. So I would try my very best to try to condense that answer the best I can to keep things very simple. And it really depends, Chris, and to everybody that's watching. Your decision to reincarnate is done by choice. You have free will. You have free will. So that's very important to mention.
Yeah.
And we will keep saying that you have free will, because there's great misconception and confusion in the movement to believe that you are forced to reincarnate. You are not forced by anybody. You have free will. So upon your decision depends on two different factors. Number one, you could reincarnate for a reason to help the earth, to do your spiritual work. Or two, you've come back to learn some important life lessons, tolerance, patience, or perhaps for both. For both. You might reincarnate to help the earth to do spiritual work, but also you're going to help your spirit to grow as well. And I'm mentioning that because that will be in reflection to your planning. And what I mean by that, you will, while you're in the spirit world, you'll think you're going to choose your mother who's going to carry your physical body. You're going to choose your father to a degree, but we do say that I might be a bit controversial here by saying this. Mothers are a little bit more important because it's them that carry the physical body. The dads are very important as part of what we call the soul group. Now, your mum and your dad, our parents and grandparents, we would have all been in the spirit world hundreds of years before. So this planning would have happened hundreds of years ago. Now I'm saying 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. There's no time in spirit. So I'm saying it so that everybody can sort of understand. Remember, there's no time in spirit. So you'll all be part of the soul group and you'll all be brothers and sisters, and you'll say, I'm going to reincarnate and I want to come back as your mother or as your son or as your daughter. So choosing your mother is the top priority because it's them that will carry. The second, as part of the soul group, is where you're going to reincarnate. That is very, very important as well. So there's different countries carry different vibrations. If you're quite of an enlightened spirit and you've got spiritual work to do, most likely you're not going to return to a war-torn country. You're going to return to a country where your light is sustained, because remember, everything's vibrating. You're vibrating a light. So that's your second plan. Another plan, you'll then have lots of discussions with your guides, with your teachers and the inspirers that will say to you, are you going to be strong enough to come back to the earth? Can you do it? Do you know how hard it is? Just to remind you, you said you didn't like it last time, and I'm saying it quite of a cold way. There would have been sat there, the Buddhist, and you'd be meditating. And then I'm sure Chris will discuss this later on, and it might be in a separate subject, your one true spirit guide. And we'll probably talk another subject about the role and the importance of your one guide or your guardian angel that will walk with you on your earthly path. So part of your plans is where you're going to reincarnate in, your family, part of the soul group, and your plans will change. Now, Spirit have said that you might make, hypothetically, 100 plans. Right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I've got this to learn. I've got these people to meet. I've got this to do. I've got that to do. And in your life, you might have only accomplished half of those things or quarter of those things. And that's why you keep reincarnating, because those plans change, because as you grow, you evolve, things will grow, things will evolve as well. So I hope I've sort of touched upon it a little bit there, Chris, and I don't know if you want to add any more onto that.
I think you've kept it on the right lines, really, what we're speaking about. And I think free will's very important throughout the whole thing, and the careful preparations that you make. I'm sure many people have asked the question, why have I reincarnated into this particular family, this particular situation? And the simple fact is we have chosen that at some point. Now, what happens when we get here is another matter, because for me, those plans can very quickly change. Cause and effect, everybody has free will. So anything can happen at any given time. So in many ways, it's best laid plans, but there is also the plan of the universe in many ways, and the lessons the universe will bring us naturally for our spirit to learn. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Absolutely. I mean, I want to mention to everybody, Chris, I mean, you touched upon it there, and while we're at it, there is a great misconception in there that about, and probably people might ask about that tonight, about dying, that you will know when you're going to die. Now, when you talk about cause and effect, do you want to elaborate on that a bit more?
Cause and effect is simply this, and I'll keep it very simple. Our understanding is that every spirit who reincarnates to the earth plane reincarnates to live a long and healthy life, to live that life the best they can, to learn those lessons, to find your true happiness, your true purpose. Anything that occurs on the way is what we call cause and effect. And what I mean by cause and effect is problems with the physical body that take us to the spirit world before our time, accidents, and tragedies, you may know them as, taking yourself to the spirit world, or what we know suicide. All these things are cause and effect, and again, you have free will. So, for example, you might have a gut feeling, don't get on that plane today, don't get in that car. We always have that free will, but cause and effect is basically anything happening at any given time, and necessarily that's not always down to you 100%, because you live in a world where people are also given free will as well. So basically, in our understanding that nobody, for example, will come back to the earth plane and plan to die as a child or plan to die of cancer. I couldn't put it any more simply to you. That may happen, but it is cause and effect. It necessarily isn't part of the plan, because that spirit would have come here to live a long and prosperous life and to live those lessons and gain those experiences. So I hope that makes sense to everyone.
I think that's absolutely spot on. And I think while you're at that point as well, you were talking there, Chris, which I think might mention, because you're quite au fait with sort of the Silver Birch teachings, about how the earth plane is filled with so many different vibrations in terms of spirits, why there can be such a conflict within society, even with family.
Oh, I'm so pleased you mentioned that, because there's a couple of things to that. First of all, when you first awaken, in any form you awaken to the fact that you are a spirit, you are a consciousness. When you awaken, it isn't always easy, because you're awakening not only to the light in the world, but to the darkness, to the illusion, either way you want to put it. So it can be very hard. This is why walking, we won't just say spiritual path, we'll call it a path of light. When you're walking on a path of light, isn't always easy, because you're aware of the pain of the earth and what is occurring. So you're having to deal with that. You're having to walk your path and think, well, and keeping that balance. But another thing I want to mention on that point is, again, to our understanding, and I read this in a Silver Birch book a couple of years ago, is in the spirit world, you will sort of reside on a vibration with others who are on a similar vibration. Now, when you're on the earth plane, this is completely different. You are mixing with all different vibrations. So to say it's a little bit more challenging for you, but there lies the lessons as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can I just mention as well, because when you said, Chris, which it made me smile before, going back a couple of questions, when you said about, you know, we return for a reason, and even the families we choose. And I'm sure there's many people watching to say, I must have been crazy returning back to my family. And what I say to you, and I'm very fortunate because I'm on the spiritual path. I know where I am in my life. I know what my purpose is. But when I openly talk about this in my addresses and teachings and philosophies, in my own experience, I had a very, very difficult childhood. I was mentally and physically abused by my parents and my brothers and sisters, and we had a very horrendous upbringing. And when I was about 17 or 18, I was in quite a dark place, and I think it was a moment when me and Chris became friends, and we joined a spiritual circle, and that's where we began our first part of our journey. And it was one of my very first questions, if you can remember, Chris, asking one of our spiritual teacher, Joaquin Tonka, who was communicating through a trance medium, and it was something I felt, if I'm such a bright light, why have I returned to this quite of a dysfunctional family, and chose parents that would do that to me? And what I was really doing, and which I've learned over these past 12 months, is I was playing the victim. I was keep saying, why is this happened to me? You should say, find a blessing. And I think what I've understood is in order for me to grow and evolve, I had to choose a family that was going to test my empathy, test my compassion, test my kindness. It was preparing me for my spiritual battles. It's going to prepare me for my spiritual path. So I then felt in my heart that I could forgive my parents. I was no longer a victim, and I found a blessing in my childhood. I saw that it's made me the person I am. I don't think I would be the person I am if I didn't go through those experiences. So it just shows you that even when Chris was talking about temptation and talking about cause and effect, sometimes a lot of bright spirits and a lot of spiritual people, I say we're all spiritual. I want to change that. We're all spiritual. Yeah. People that end up taking a spiritual path, healers, mediums, psychics, shamans, really can relate to this, that we end up returning to families that are very broken, that quite low vibration, and it's our light. And often we feel, don't we, Chris, we feel like the black sheep of the family. We feel so disconnected with our family, and you think, is it me, is it them, and you question. But I stand so firm in that belief now.
I think what comes to mind with what you said, Stephen, is the truth will set you free.
It set me free, and I felt so happy. Do you want to do a couple of questions, Chris?
Yeah, we've got a few questions, so we're going to start with, see if we can get this up. It's Joanna Cox, and we can see she's asking, where is the spirit world? Are they just living amongst us in a different dimension? Which is an interesting question, because how many times do we look up? And the question is, you're doing a service and somebody will say, can you take a Kath? Is she upstairs or downstairs? So is there an upstairs? What is it? Is there a downstairs? And,
right. I think that's so interesting. And I think what I can say to that, Joanna, is all it is, we are a spirit in a physical body. Unfortunately or fortunately, what we call our logical mind, our conscious mind or subconscious mind, our ego tries to compute, tries to understand up or down. That's why there's no such thing as hell or heaven. There isn't such thing as up or down. All it is a state of mind. Our physical mind tries to comprehend that we say up or down as a way of light and dark, or spirit there and we here. It's just the way that we can physically or egotistically try to understand that. So where is the spirit world is a state of mind. I'll ask you a question, Joanna. How powerful is thought? Now, spirits say it is as powerful as a second. So the minute you think of a loved one, they are there. That's how quick and powerful thought are. And that's the same with the spirit world. We can all connect to the spirit world. It's just our own distortions, our own fears, anxiousness, depression shackles us from that connection. And that's why in society, in life now, our job as light workers is to reconnect back to the divine light, reconnect back to the source, so that we are able to channel spirit like we can communicate with one another now. So there isn't really an up or down. It's just a state of mind. That's all the way I can describe it, Chris. I don't know. Do you want to add any more to that?
I think you put it very well and very simply. I think that's very well put. And that power of thought, that's really important, how quick a thought is. And the power of thoughts, positive or negative, this is where we can be the creators in what we're sending out will always come back to us. But that might be another subject, another time. So we're going to move on to another question.
Brilliant.
And this one from Sarah Greenwood. And the question is, spooky you're discussing this today. Earlier today, my son told me he has known me for 85 years and he chose me to be his mum. Is it possible for a child to remember a previous life? Now, can I just add something? Or it's really a question, Stephen. There was a book, and it was written by a gentleman, and when he was a child, he had an experience, I think it was, and he remembered everything. He was able to, I'm sure it was in America, and he was able to remember every single thing from a past life. I don't know if you recall that.
I do remember that, yeah.
Yeah, but there's been a few examples, but I'm going to pass over to you on this one, if it's okay.
Yeah, just keep the question up for a minute, Chris. Just keep it up.
Absolutely well.
So basically, what I can say to you that, very simply, yes, your son has known you. Your son might have been your grandfather in many lives ago. You would have known each other, and there might be other spirits to say, Sarah, you know, I want to be your mummy too. So there might be other spirits there. I'm not saying
very true.
I'm not saying that, Sarah. So yes, he was probably saying, I want you to be my mum. You might have been a Native American Indian in his past life, and you could have been a chief's daughter, and you're making plans, and you say, right, I want to come back to your family because I've got this to learn. So you're absolutely spot on. And children, I want to say to you as well, and on a bit of science here, part of the cranial development, which is the skull part, what we call the pineal or the pituitary gland, is very much open as children, and the cranial development doesn't ceases about 11 at puberty. And that's why children have got such an affinity to spirit and so natural, because they're very innocent to a degree. They're very open, susceptible, so they're going to remember. And often when they get to puberty, they'll go to secondary school and they will get ridiculed. The bullies come in and those cranial development ceases. They get programmed, they could get conditioned, and they'll end up losing the spiritual link. Now, it's our job as parents, and it's your job, Sarah, and many other mums and dads that are watching this, is to empower your children to keep their spirituality, to keep the spiritual link, and not weave your own things or program your children, condition your children in your own views. Empower your child. And is it possible for a child to remember the previous life? Yes, it is. However, not all children are, we're not all meant to remember. I mean, this is another subject altogether. Why don't we all remember our past lives? Well, some of us do remember snippets. But Spirit have said, if we all remember truly our past lives and our life in the spirit world, there will be mass suicide. Because there would be no responsibility then, was there, Chris? Everybody would say, well,
yeah, that's absolutely right.
Go back to the spirit world. So I think there must be a level of we're not supposed to remember certain things.
I think what's important is, because we have many discussions at the Purple Mountain about this, and some people respectfully, we've experienced that can get a little bit fixated on past lives and the details. And we always say, be careful what you're looking for, because it might not always be what you want to find. It might not always be the best of memories. And I truly believe in my heart that if you need to remember something from a life you have led, a past life, that will be helpful to you and beneficial in this life, you will recall it. Either it will come to you, either in a meditation as you're going about your life, or in a dream state. It will be brought up naturally, because your spirit will almost unlock that to help you on your pathway. That's my thoughts.
Absolutely. It will surface from the subconscious mind where it's needed. So shall we do another question?
Yes, we've got another question. So this is from Angela Potts. Hello, Angela. And the question is, when you meet someone or you've been somewhere you have never been or met that person, you have a connection. Is that reincarnation?
Well, there is different facets to that. I want to say to you as well. Now, two things to that, Angela, trying to keep it very simple, is that most likely when you meet somebody and you have that instant connection, it could be that their spiritual life, there is an attraction there. Now, what can happen sometimes is that it can be a confusion. So you might be attracted to that person and you confused, and it might be from the opposite sex. But what you're attracted to is not them physically, but spiritually. And you might have a connection. Now, that can be because you're part of the same soul group, or you might have been friends in the spirit world and you've just met up, or might have met up. The other part is on what we call the astral plane. The astral plane is somewhere that lots of us will go when we are sleeping. That's another subject altogether, the astral plane. And I'll give you an example. You might be looking for some guidance and you might be very stuck in your physical life, and you said, I want to move, I want to have a change, and I want some assistance. Now, in the astral plane, you might meet up with your guides and they'll say, I want to take you to this place. And it might be many miles away, sort of on the astral plane, hypothetically. And they'll show you to this beautiful house. And when you wake up, you might remember fragments of it. And then your dream will eventually disappear. And you'll then say, I want to move. And you might get impressed. And then you end up viewing a couple of houses. And you walk into this house and you say, I've been here before. And I don't know why, but this house looks very familiar to me. And it is, you have been there, because you've been there spiritually. You visited there on the astral plane. So there's different facets to that. Is it to do with the reincarnation? In part, yes, it is.
Yeah.
So do you want to add anything to that, Chris?
No, I think you've been absolutely right. There's more than one facet to that part. It can be a past life connection. It can be a connection, as we spoke about, on an astral level where you've connected with somebody. Again, we spoke about soul groups as well. You might be part of the soul group, as we mentioned earlier. But everything for a reason. This is why we say follow your feelings. We always trust those feelings that we get right here when we meet anybody or we're in a situation, and they will serve you really well. So we're going to move on to another question. We've got lots of questions, which we love. Keep the questions coming. This is why we're doing this video this evening, to share some knowledge and hopefully learn from one another. So,
brilliant.
Our next one. Oh no, that was a comment. Sorry, we want the one above. Okay. Would you want to read this one, Stephen?
I have an overwhelming fear of heights, as I've always gotten the urge to jump. Could this have now been a past and a previous life? Right, Kerry. Most likely, in my personal opinion, now I don't do dream interpretations. No, sorry, I've got that wrong. You not have this in a dream. Overwhelming fear of heights. most likely there could be a possibility that you've might have had an accident, you might commit suicide, or I don't know, over a bridge in your past life or over a cliff. That might have been in the previous life. I'm not saying that is what's happened with you, Carrie. Now, I know Chris might be really good to answer this question because Chris has got a fear of water, and he was told that he drowned in a past life. And I know with myself, in many lives ago in ancient Egypt, I was eaten and killed by a crocodile. Now, I don't really have fear of water as such. I feel like I've sort of overcome that fear. I was quite fearless when I was younger in terms of water. So it can either work, and I know another friend who's always got this fear around her neck. Do you remember, Chris? We can't mention her name for obvious reasons.
It's an interesting question on a few levels. Yes, I have a caution with water, which I feel I drowned in a past life, and so that's something I've had to overcome in this life. But the other part of this question that's interesting, and it's something myself and Stephen have been discussing lately, is how fears can be imprinted in our childhood as well. So, for example, your mum or your dad, if they have a fear of heights or a fear of water, they can actually unknowingly imprint that as well. So it can be from your parents or your grandparents or a guardian as well, not necessarily past life. I don't know if you want to add to that, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it's absolutely very interesting that what we call our parents and our family when we're younger as children, we're like sponges. And what we call these people, I say these people, family and friends, and we end up doing that to our children. And
yes, so it can carry on.
It carries on. What we call weaving, they can weave their fear. Now, my mother weaved a very bad fear on me, which is the fear of the dentist. And for years it took me, and it was my mum's fear that weaved her fear into mine. And it took me a very, very long time. And I'm still frightened of the dentist even today. So it just shows you how, and of course, we're not saying this in judgment towards our family and friends. And that's how behaviors can be interwoven and woven and programmed into our chakras and into our auric field. So there's different dynamics, different facets to that, Kerry. So I hope we've sort of given you a bit of food for thought. So you have a look at the next question, Chris.
Yes. So our next question is from Katie, and she asks, is there any tips on explaining where you go when you die to a 4-year-old? My little girl was confused when she said to her great nana that she should ring great granddad in heaven if she misses him. And just before you answer this, Stephen, I find this fascinating. And I speak to a lot of mums and dads on our market when we're out and about doing services, and this shows the responsibility of being a parent here. These bright lights coming into the world, and they are experiencing so much, because I remember a lady said to me many years ago, oh, my daughter, I think she said she was 8, and she said, I think she's going to be psychic. And I explained to her, no, actually, she's more connected with the spirit world as a child when you come into this world than ever. So many times we see our children and they might mention the imaginary friend. They might see a loved one in the room. They might be reacting with their eyes and acknowledge somebody around. So they have a fantastic connection to the spirit world. I just wanted to add that before you answered the question.
Yeah, I mean, there's different parts of the question. Again, they're not as simple to answer, but my advisement, and I can't say this because I'm not a parent, but my only advisement as a reader, as a medium, as a healer, as a shaman, to anybody that's got children is always try to empower your children. Keep very open-minded with your children when it comes to spirit, and try to empower them. we're not talking about religion here, because religion has unfortunately in many ways have done too much damage to the human consciousness, to the spiritual consciousness, and have hindered, because it was only less than 100 years ago you would dare talk about spirit. I mean, I know a lot of, even the past sort of a few years, and with the readings we've done, where how many times have parents said to children, you've not got an imaginary friend, don't talk about that, you're scaring me. And it's a very natural thing to, as children, to be very open, and they can sense spirit. So my only advisement really is, any tips is just be very open. Talk with your daughter very openly about spirit, to say she's in heaven, she's in the spirit world, she's happy, she's probably baking, and have a picture of her. So it's, you know, I think sometimes we can be too protective, and by protecting our children, we end up doing more damage. And it's the same with funerals. You know, funerals are very viewed as a very negative sort of thing. And I think it should be a sort of a celebration, and we should empower our children, teach our children very much about life and death, but physical death, but spiritual death can never happen. Your spirit moves on. So my tip to you, Katie, is just be very open with your daughter. You're probably doing the best thing, you know, empower her. Don't weave any of your own fears. Allow your daughter to be very open about spirit, about her grandparents and her nana and her granddad in the spirit world, and she will see them. And what a beautiful feeling is that, to know that our children can see spirit and reach out to our loved ones. I think it's a beautiful thing. What a fantastic way of connecting. And it's our job as parents to ensure that they keep that connection for the rest of their life. But instead, so many of us sort of imprint our own fears, and it's a shame. It's a shame. So should we have a look at the next question, Chris?
Yes, I've had to backtrack a bit. Apologies if I've missed a few at the top, but we're going to make sure we get them. It's Sarah. She asked another question. So this question is, can we reincarnate into a different form, or are we stuck into coming back as the same? For example, would I be able to come back as a dog next time? Or do I have to come back as a human? Snoozing all day would be ideal.
I'll answer that very, very simple. There are what we call universal laws, Sarah, and it wouldn't be very conducive to your own consciousness, because each animal species, we all vibrate at a particular frequency. We vibrate a particular height. I know we talk about soul groups and different vibrations, but I know a lot of the Buddhists believe in that you will reincarnate back to the animal. But no, you cannot reincarnate back to a dog or cat. Maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago, in your very, 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 very first reincarnation, your very beginning, you might have reincarnated as an animal in the beginning, but most likely you have not. You will continually reincarnate back to the what we call, you talk about different form, we talk about the human body, the human form, because we're part of that collective consciousness, both physically and spiritually. So no, you will not, nor can you reincarnate back to the bird, to an ant, to a dog and snooze all day, because the spirit does not de-evolve. And we're not saying a dog or a cat is less in an evolutionary scale. We're not saying that, but we all are moving forward. That would only hinder our own progression. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Chris.
And no, I think it's absolutely spot on, and it's a question that's asked by many people. So thanks for your two questions, Sarah. And we're going to move on to another question. Do you want to read this one, Stephen? It's from Marie Marsden.
If after being on the Earth plane only once we decide not to ever come back to the Earth, does this mean we never evolve? We will never evolve or progress? Sorry, it's a bit long-winded. No, absolutely. We know that no, you don't have to come back to the Earth to reincarnate. I know that We keep saying, we keep emphasizing the importance of reincarnating back to the earth plane, to what we call a physical vibration in this dimension, because there are many different dimensions which we won't go to tonight. That's another subject. But yes, you can evolve in the spirit world. However, it will take you even longer. But then it seems hypocritical of me saying that, because there's no time in spirit. So what's the rush? But ultimately, your physical experiences, I keep saying it, your physical experiences is so good for your spiritual development. When you stumble, when you fall, the good times, the bad times, it's so what you can learn in 80 years in this reincarnation, you cannot learn in 1,000 years in the spirit world.
Yeah, I think it was explained.
Learning is.
It was explained to us once by Spirit in a trance session in simple terms that we could understand. If you think that, for example, I've just led a life and gone back to the spirit world, and Stephen's trying to progress in the spirit world, and he might never been lived in a time where he's drove a car, so he can't have that physical experience in the spirit world. So what he will do is seek people out who have done, and he might ask me, well, what's it like to drive a car? So you're getting that. It's a little bit more difficult, but you can still do it, but nothing beats that experience. It's faster in a way.
Yeah, so really, Marie, if you don't want to come back next life, you don't have to come back.
No,
but remember,
probably will do though.
Unfortunately, we'll talk about this also in another time. The ego, the physical ego, it can be good and can be bad. It can hinder our progression. It can be that other angel, the dark angel at the side of us, and the good angel at the side of us. So my advisement to you, Marie, is that once you go back to the spirit world, once the ego dies and the physical body dies, your true spirit is revealed, and you most likely will say, I'm going to be making my plans in my next life, because you won't have those fears. Those fears would have been gone. Those fears have been left behind. Often we say we never reincarnate is because we're scared of making mistakes. We're scared of a difficult life. But don't be. Everything that we do is lessons. We are always learning. So see that as a positive.
And that fear will never be your friend. It'll always hold you back. So we're going to move on. We've got lots of questions coming in now. Lots. So we're going to work out. This is actually one from before. And it's saying, I was once told that I've been here twice before. Also that I have another few, I presume, lives to go. Apparently in life, I'm a slow learner. I don't learn what I need to. Does sound like me, laugh out loud. However, knowing that, I'm still scared of death. And that's from Kerry Elson.
I mean, very, very simply, I want to keep this very, very simple. There are so many people in life that are guided by fear. Now, there are two energies in the universe, which is love. No, there is unconditional love, and then there is fear. Unfortunately, which one you feed, Kerry, depends on you. The fear energy within us, we feed. Our true spiritual light doesn't have darkness within it. It might have imperfection. My light might not be as bright as your light. It will fluctuate. So the fear side, we give so much of our power to the fear, to anxiousness. You're talking about, I'm scared to death of death. You're scared of death. Well, I can say to you, Carrie, you can't die. Your physical body, a lot of people aren't scared of death. They're scared of how they're going to die. And really, Spirit have said that if there's any consolation to this, to you, Carrie, that Spirit said physical death takes less than a second. That second on, you see the light and you go back to the spirit world. You go back to that same vibration. So don't be frightened to live your life. You can't hide behind those doors. And we talk a lot, and it's very relevant to the world today. There's so many people that are guided by fear, and they're anxious and depressed. It's because your job, Carrie, is through meditating, is know who you are, Guide yourself back to the divine light and know your purpose, because your happiness. Unfortunately, when we grow up in the society that we live in, there is so much distortion and fragmentation. We're conditioned by religion, by education. We're confused. There is so much anger in the world, and all these things are imprinted on us. And no wonder there's so many of us that carry this heavy burden. And it's our job to center our own power, lift our spirits up, and to push away those distortions, to be our true self. Now, you say you're a slow learner. I don't believe in quickening progressing. We all progress in our own way. There is no rush. You might take 10,000 years to learn patience, and it might take me only 5,000 years. It's who we are. Life is not a race. We've got to enjoy the journey of life. So don't put yourself under all this pressure, Carrie. Just live your life, shine your light. Don't live in fear.
I think something that's often spoke about as well is it's not about the, the teaching isn't always in the destination, it's in the journey. And that's said many times, it's wise words. So it's just slow and enjoy the experience, enjoy each day, because it goes quick. So thank you very much for that, Stephen, and thanks for your question, Kerry. So we're going to move on to another question, and this is from Shah, and she's asking, could you tell us more about crystal children? Now, we've all heard, many of us have heard about the indigo children in the past, but spirit and many of those in the spiritual work who channel spirit or work in any form of trance or connect with spirit are talking now about the crystal children. So I don't know if you can enlighten us a bit on that, Stephen.
Yes, I want to go back with what you mentioned about the indigo children. Now, indigo children we'll talk about a group of, we say children, we talk about physically here, they're not children in the spirit world, they're very, very enlightened ancestors that have lived on the earth plane millions of years ago. Very, very enlightened beings, a part of our consciousness, part of our human DNA, if that makes sense to everybody. Yeah. So the indigo children's aim and objective was last 200-300 years was to reincarnate back to the earth, to make real positive spiritual change, to enlighten and lift the vibrations of the earth. That was the aim of the indigo children. Unfortunately, no matter what a bright spirit you are, once you hit the earth plane, you will be tempted like everybody else. Now, unfortunately, a lot of indigo children failed to a degree that task. Now, there is a lot of more enlightened children called crystal children or earth children. Crystal children are a group of very, very special enlightened brothers and sisters in the spirit world whose aim and objective is simply to lift the vibrations of the earth, to create a new golden era of peace, prosperity, and harmony of all humanity, so that there is no pollution. Everything's eco-friendly. We all live in peace and harmony. And that's the aim of the crystal children, because the vibrations of the earth are too low. And it's down to people like us to lift the vibrations of the earth before it's just destroyed. Very, very simple. We have to protect the earth. And that's the job of the crystal children. And why do you think, everybody, all these crystals are being mined from the earth? They've been mined for thousands of years. Yes, they have in ancient Egypt, in China, but it's more apparent now because it's the crystals. We know that crystals of all different forms hold a collector's consciousness. They have a very deep connection with the earth. And by linking with the ley lines, we can finally lift the distortions, lift the fears, lift the hurt and the trauma, and finally bring peace and harmony upon the earth. So I hope I've answered that question, Chris.
Yes, very good. And thanks to Shah for the question. Lots of love and light to you. And we're going to move on to another question from Adam Purnell. Do you know him, Stephen?
Yes.
And
You
he
can answer
asks,
this one, Chris.
well, you could read it then.
Okay. Adam says, are there an infinite number of spirits? As the world population grows rapidly, are the majority of these new live spirits who haven't come back for a while, or are they new spirits? If they're new spirits, how are new spirits born into existence? There's
Oh,
actually, Albert would say there's 6 different questions to that question.
yeah, there's a lot of questions. I'm going to portion it off this, Adam, if I can. And the first one is, in a way, to ask how many spirits there are, it is infinite in a way. It's how long is a piece of string? How quick is a thought? How big is the universe? Who is God? Is there a God? It's one of those questions. So, in a way, there are an infinite number, I would believe. And it's interesting when we talk about world population, and I might be a bit controversial here, but it's my true thoughts is I believe when we talk about how the population is growing rapidly, that actually is a little bit of a distortion within itself. That many wish to sort of imprint on us how we're becoming overwhelmed and protect ourselves and separate ourselves. But that's another issue. But as I'm just going to go back on your question, a majority of these new spirits. Now, this is interesting, and it's a question Stephen asked. Where does the spirit start? What is the birth of the spirit? Um, but we do know that there are some enlightened spirits who will come back into situations where there may be, for example, quite a high risk of returning to the earth plane quite quickly. I don't know if you remember some of this, Stephen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this isn't always the case, but we talk about some of our cases in the earth plane of country where there's a quite high levels of poverty and where there is a high case of children, unfortunately, returning to the spirit world. And you might get a enlightened spirit, new spirit, as we say, coming in because they're able to experience that life, if that makes sense. That is one example. But in terms of how new spirits are born, actually takes us to soul partners, which to me, reincarnation, soul partners, karmic law, and universal law all go together in one subject because they're interlinked. And we start with the beginning in ways when we talk about soul partners, which I hope you find this interesting, Adam, as I'm going into this question, because it was explained to us, for example, like an apple. So if you imagine one apple, one energy, one atom is born, and that atom is split into two. And one is, for example, you, and the other will be your soul partner. And that is the beginning of your journey. And when you grow into your individuality as well. Just because you were one and the same at one time doesn't mean you're identical or you always have to you're not a mirror image or anything like that. You create your own journeys yourself, but you will always come back together. So on the question here, I might be opening up to other questions here when I talk about soul partners, because I truly believe that we do all have a soul partner. Whether our soul partner is reincarnated at the same time, that is possible. But sometimes we know that not all our soul partners reincarnate, but we will always connect with our soul partner back in the spirit world as well. Okay. Now, a few people might ask, well, what if my soul partner is in the spirit world? Who will my partner be when I return? What have we mapped out in a way of a rough idea of who we'll meet? And simply, if your soul partner is still in the spirit world, if they've chosen not to reincarnate, then what will happen is there will be another you'll be close to within your soul group who will come back and be what you call your life partner. So there'll be the partner, there'll be that love there. But when you return to the spirit world, eventually, after spending time with that partner, or if you've had more than one partner or more than two, you will acknowledge them, spend that time with them in the spirit world as long as you like. But eventually, you will return to that love of your soul partner. So I hope, yeah, you might. Do you want to add anything, Stephen?
No, yeah, sorry, not on soul partners, but I think with the existence of spirit, I guess what we call part of the great creator, if we can say that, the pool of energy, the pool of light, is infinite amount of spirits, and this is why giving birth to a child, because it's the continuation of the human race, an opportunity for us all to reincarnate, to live another life, to progress, to evolve. And that's why the continuation. So when you see the depopulation, it's wrong. It's wrong. We don't need to depopulate. And we need more spirits returning, more bright spirits returning to the earth. But there's an infinite amount of spirits and new spirits, what we call new spirits that have never experienced. And Chris was touching on it, didn't you, before, about what we call your individuality.
It's a little bit like, if I could just add, Stephen, it's a little bit like when you're born into this world. How do you know when something hurts? How do you know what something feels like? So you might trip and fall and scrape your knee, and you go, "Well, that hurt. I'll try not to do that again." And it's having those first experiences and learning and growing.
I think you're spot on there. That's what I was going to touch upon. It's again, keep repeating ourselves there. It's your experiences, and you take those experiences with you that helps your spirit to grow after one reincarnation after another. So yeah, it's a very interesting question. Now you can go on and on with those questions, Adam.
Yeah,
so we'll
excellent question, Adam. And I remember Stephen asking that one in circle, and it's been asked by many people. Where does it all start as well? And some of it might even be beyond our comprehension.
Oh, just want to mention there, Chris. I think I might ask myself that when I next have my medicine.
Oh, right, that'll be interesting. Okay, so we're going on to the next question here. Now this is with Sarah. I'm just going to change our thing a little bit because it's a big question, this. Or not. Okay. Sarah's asking, death is my biggest fear too. This has been mentioned a lot tonight. After years of trying to figure out my fear of the unavoidable, I worked out that I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of this life ending. I love my life and don't want it to end. I now see a fear of death as a good thing because it just means I'm really happy right now. This thought process has helped me slightly. So I don't know if you want to add anything there, Stephen.
Yeah, I think you really answered your own question there. Death, it's I think where it stems from, a lot of people that are scared of death, there is that saying, isn't it? I'm scared of dying because I've never lived. And I think just living the moment. People say that people that are scared of death are scared of living. They're already living in the future. And really, my advisement to anybody is to live in the moment. I think we can't think about, at the end of the day, anybody that's listening now, none of us are getting out of here alive. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
Physically going to die.
He's not talking about this. It's not this video, by the way. He's talking about life.
yeah, I'm not saying now. So really, it comes down to, you're very true there, Sarah. It's your happiness. If you are centered, if you know what your life's purpose is, you're truly happy, your heart center is good, you're part of the divine light, you know where you are, you won't be scared. You know, just try harder in your next life. You know, it's just through one door, through another door. Don't be frightened to live. Don't be scared to live. Instead, you're going to die.
Okay, I'm going to just thanks for your question, Sarah, by the way, and your feedback. Many thanks. I'm really pleased you connect with us this evening. So, I just want to follow up. It isn't a question, this, but just wanted to add this from Adam. He says, also, just as a follow-up, I don't believe we are overpopulated. We just have a large population. So I was wondering where all the new spirits came from to make up those lives. But thanks for the answer. Really helpful. So I'm going to just add Shah as well. She just wants to share something with us here. My dad committed suicide. I think since returning to the spirit world, he's had a lot of work to do. But I've been told he's healing and finding peace, and deep in my gut, I knew it was true before it was even said. Now that's important because nothing
Yeah.
can kid your feelings. I feel he had to heal a bit because I could feel him around me more, if that makes sense. I hope they are always trouble. We all deserve peace and light. We certainly do.
Can I just
Absolutely.
mention something there, Chris? Can
Yes.
I just mention something there, Chris, about suicides and people that take drugs and people take alcohol? And unfortunately, it's a big pandemic in the world today. And there's just too many of our brothers and sisters, our family that return to the spirit world before their time. They are not meant to take that path. And unfortunately, we've got to, as a society, got to change our thinking, change our stance on drugs, alcohol, and suicides. We can't judge people for that. I'm not saying that. But don't see suicide as suicide. Don't see drugs as drugs. Don't see alcohol as alcohol. See the pain. Your dad, Shah, somewhere had deep emotional pain, and he, like many others that take their lives because they are unable to face their pain, their trauma, their pain. And that's the same with alcoholics, same as drug addicts. They will use drugs as a way to mask their emotional pain. And that's why healing work, Chris, in today, why it's so important. We need more healers out there in the world who can break free of these distortions in society, where we've got to heal people, assist people in the self-healing process so that they are able to face their own pain and their fear. Because it's easier, we say it's easy, don't we, Chris, to drink, to take drugs, to commit suicide, than to face that pain and trauma. And it's our jobs here to face that pain and trauma. So I just want to add a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of people struggle in this world because there's so much presented around us and given to us and that we walk through that has nothing to do with who we are or why we're here. And that confusion can be very hard for people to walk through. So in ways, many of us look for things to hide away and to almost create an illusion within an illusion to keep going. But the true way is to do that hard work, the hardest work, and that is to start breaking through it, finding our truths. So I just wanted to add, because I spotted this question where you were answering that one, Stephen, and it's from Joanna Cox, and she asks, if somebody commits suicide, are they always going to be troubled souls?
Right, that's very interesting, quite controversial here. So I want to reinstate to everybody, nobody is meant to commit suicide. Nobody's meant to commit suicide. Try to encourage people that are suicidal. It's not the right path to take. It's not the right path. Now, what happens to the spirit? People believe that once you return back to the spirit world, all your troubles and all your pain and sorrow is left behind. To a degree, you are right. Physically, the physical body's no more. It's gone. The spirit moves on. But remember, the spirit is pure emotions. It's pure light, pure love. Now, when you go back to the spirit world, the spirit have explained to us that the moment of death, depending on your death, it is almost a sin, not a sin. It's almost against your own gift. Your life's a gift, and it's very traumatic for the spirit to take their own life. Now, I'm saying this, not judgment. I know a couple of friends that have committed suicide. It's not good. It's not nice. And it's the loved ones that are left behind that have to pick up the pieces. Now, as a responsible spirit, if you have committed suicide, you go back to the spirit world, you're not going to sit there in a fluffy cloud and say, well, everything's happy and everything's done. You're going to look down and you're thinking, oh my God, what have I done? And you will have those thoughts. You have those thoughts. You'll have your guides and you'll have your loved ones in spirit that will that will, in essence, give you the healing, give you the love, and it will take you time in the spirit world. It won't suddenly be after a couple of days and you're fine. There'll be many moments where you need that self-healing to recuperate, to get your thoughts back. You'll have a lot of regrets. You'll have a lot of positive things you've done as well. And often a lot of people, spirits that have committed suicide, end up being inspirers, end up helping other healers, other people that have done this themselves. So end up being light workers themselves, if that makes sense to everybody. So are there going to be troubled souls? Most likely no, but I'm not saying that everything's going to be happy and content once they go back to the spirit world. It won't be. It will be very emotional for them, and that's why we keep saying, and particularly in the healing work, a lot of the healing work we do here at the Purple Mountain is about facing your fear. It's about facing your pain and your trauma. We're so clever. We think we're so clever in locking our pain away, locking our trauma away, but they always catch up to us. Now, when we go back to the spirit world, every thought, every action, every word will all come back to you within seconds. And you've heard this before in people that have had operations and they've had out-of-body experience and they felt they're going through this tunnel, and every thought, every action went through their mind. And when you've gone through traumatic circumstances like suicide, they can end up being, not all the time, but sometimes they can get lost, which then sometimes they will need rescuing, which is another subject. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Chris.
Just what I wanted to add while we're on the subject, to my thoughts and understanding, many people might discuss what happens to those when they commit suicide and when they go to the spirit world. In our understanding, it's very simple. Any troubles that you are trying to hide away from here, you are not escaping them. You will take all that with you. It'll have to be sorted. It'll have to be faced one way or another. So really, there isn't a hell. Nobody gets sent anywhere. You only create what you want to. So if you are in that place here, you will find yourself in the same situation wherever you might go, until that is faced and acknowledged, whatever it may be that's troubling you.
You've said that a lot more simply than I did, Chris, so thank you.
Well, it's an interesting subject, but I just want to go, I'm flicking through. I will come to Aaron's got a question, but I just want to touch on another one from Marie just on this subject, because I just want to finish off this particular subject. And the question is, I believe that those who commit suicide, it can be an imbalance in our earthly brain. What are your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the brain, unfortunately, is an organ that, as a society, we don't look after enough. And it's our job, and that's why we try to, when we talk lifestyle changes here upon this earth, it's not just, we're a one tablet society, unfortunately. And I believe, what you eat, what you drink, exercise, water, nutrients, minerals, they all contribute to a healthy body, to a healthy brain. And everything that we eat is energy. And I think, yes, you're right. Sometimes it's proven that that there is chemical imbalances in the brain, but very, very few that happens. We can't say all suicides that have had chemical imbalances, but yes, Marie, you are right. Spirit have said sometimes there is chemical imbalances in the brain that affect certain functions of the brain, and some people can't handle that and they will commit suicide to that. But then again, that's cause and effect. That's unfortunately the physical body. That can happen. Yeah. But that's a different form of suicide, I would assume. So that's a bit interesting. But really, everything, our job is our bodies are temple, and we've got to look after the temple. We've got to look after the body, look after the immune system, what we eat, how we, what we drink lots of water, all these things contribute to a healthy brain. Healthy brain.
And what I feel is, if I could just add something, Stephen, is something we were discussing the other night with a friend of ours about our current mental health system, which we can all agree is, not giving enough. It's not giving enough. And another form of masking is all this medication and the many ways that things are masked, when really we should be helping people through the problems and to face them best we can. Because to me, that is another form of masking, and it's something that we are awakening to, the increasing problems in mental health. And I think many of us have experienced in some form or another depression, anxiety, and to create that open society more, less judgment, listening to one another, and understanding the body, and breaking that system of where that system just wants to pump us full of medication to hide it, which just causes more of a problem, in my opinion.
That's why I believe, Chris, that I'm not saying everybody, majority of depression, and I'll talk about fibromyalgia in a minute, the majority of people who are depressed is a disconnection of your own spiritual light, because ultimately it's your heart center. Your connection is what we call the divine light, is the center of your happiness, your joy, your purpose, your individuality, your authentic self. And when we're disconnected, you get depressed, and that depression sinks in. Fibromyalgia, people aren't questioning why are more people getting fibromyalgia. It's basically, it's trauma. It's physical pain and trauma we don't deal with. And pain and trauma is trapped in the body, and it manifests itself into illness and disease. And that's what's happening. And it's our job to face that pain, face that trauma, because it's harder to do that once you go back to the spirit world.
Okay, so thank you for that, Stephen, and thank you for that last question, Marie. Lots of great questions tonight. Really appreciate people connecting with us. And this next question is from Aaron, and he asks, "Hi guys, can you talk why we don't remember anything on our past lives when we return to the earth plane?" Manny's question. So do you want I know we spoke about this earlier, but maybe you just want to briefly answer that question, Stephen.
Yeah, I think some of us are fortunate that we will remember snippets, we'll remember bits about our past lives. I have done a lot of ayahuasca and Kambo treatments, where I've been given the very perfect opportunity where I was able to remember certain things about my past lives. But like Chris said earlier on, there is absolutely no reason why you need to remember your past life. There is a sort of a bit of an obsession in certain parts of the movement where they want to know all about the past lives, and you're living in the past there. I think what's important is to live in the moment. And what makes me laugh, which Spirit have said, which I completely understand, and you probably agree with it as well, Chris, is that people they romanticize their past lives.
Yeah, very true.
They were singers and they were Egyptian priests. Well, in your past life, you could have been a mass murderer. You could have been.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You could have lived only 6 years old, and you could have died because of a virus. Life expectancy not long ago was very low. So I think that's why. I think there are a lot of good things of your past lives to remember, and there's also many things in your past lives I think is best to stay in the past. And like Chris said, it will come out from your spirit when it needs to, when you need to remember.
Yeah, I truly believe that. That if we really need to recall something, if it is beneficial, if that past life experience is beneficial in this life, right here, right now, it will come to you in some form, dream state, meditation, or that memory will come back if it can serve you in this life and help you along. So it will naturally come up.
What would happen as well, that if you were shown about your past life, it can affect this life. It can affect your decisions in this life, and that's what
absolutely.
It's better to remember.
So we're going to move on. I think this is probably be our final question. So it is from Sarah again, and she asks, for those who choose not to reincarnate again, what happens to their soul? Do they just stay stuck in the spirit world, or do they move somewhere else? It's quite funny this, because I was just envisaging all these lost people, but it's not quite that way.
No, I think it'd be great to finish off now, really, about what the spirit world is, and we talked about the vibration. Now, a lot of us have talked about the halls of learning, and spirits say it's the most beautiful place. And you think it was such a wonderful and beautiful place, and that really, for the last question, Matt, with Manny's question, Aaron's question is, when you come from such a high vibration, such a beautiful place, if you are to remember that, you're thinking, what am I doing in this dirty earth plane? I'm going to kill myself and get back to the spirit world. And that's another reason why you're not supposed to remember. I don't like using the word, are they just stuck? Well, you have free will and choice in the spirit world. I'll just give you a couple of stories. A lot of musicians, Elvis and Freddie Mercury, a lot of the very, very well-known artists that have returned to the spirit world, they host, Michael Jackson, they host beautiful music concerts with Mozart and all the very well-known spiritual artists, and they host massive concerts in the spirit world. You have halls of learning beyond our comprehension, billions of books. They have different libraries, they have artist rooms, they have teaching, they have gardens and fountains, other planets. They have what we call the rainbow bridge, where all the animals are. So I don't think any spirit's going to be stuck. I think they're all having good fun up there in the spirit world. So yeah. So another thing I want to mention about reincarnation is that not only do we reincarnate for us, we build upon that consciousness vibration. So as we are learning, we are feeding the consciousness light as well. So in a way, I'm progressing for you and you're progressing for me as well. We're all learning together. I think it's been an absolutely fantastic evening, and I think we'll have to do a couple more this week or next week, Chris, on just reincarnation.
Yeah, we'll try and join everybody possibly next, maybe next Monday or around there. We'll definitely do a series on reincarnation. Inevitably, with reincarnation, as I said, it connects with universal law, karmic law. So we're going to connect those things in. If we have any more questions that haven't been able to be answered tonight, please write them down and join us next time. And it's such a fascinating subject, reincarnation. We are still learning right now. This is one question leads to another. It never ends.
I think what I was going to say there, Chris, it'd be great also next time, which we're gaining a lot of new knowledge all the time as well about family loops, ancestral loops, how countries have to evolve, and it's just very relevant what's happening. So lots of fascinating questions, a lot of fascinating topics to come, and we might maybe invite a couple of guests into the talk maybe next time. That would be great as well, wouldn't you, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to keep this going. We're going to call this a series of videos on reincarnation. So we're going to keep them going as long as everybody out there wants to hear and share that information. We're going to keep doing them. And it's been a fantastic evening. Thank you, everybody who's joined us this evening, for your love and for your fantastic questions that's kept us on our toes, which is what we're here for. And from myself and Stephen, we just want to say, always walk in your truth, be the light, see the light within you, love yourself. And from us, Chris and Stephen at the Purple Mountain, we send you much love and blessings. Stay safe and well always.
Good night, God bless everybody.